And now, please welcome founder and CEO of SimpliFlying, Shashank Nigam.
Flying is magical. I remember being on my first flight. Despite having worked with over 100 airlines in the last 15 years, I still remember being on my first flight, which was January 31st, 1994, from New Delhi to Singapore on an old Aeroflot Illusion aircraft. Not only that, I still remember my daughter's first flight. She was 2.5. We were flying from Toronto, where we used to live, to Halifax, and it was the first time. So she was peeled to the window as we taxied, and she goes, "Dad, there's a plane with a green tail and a teal tail, and Dad, there's a maple leaf on the back of a tail." And as we take off, she catches the first glimpse of Lake Ontario. And she looks at me and goes, "Dad, it's not a lake, it's an ocean. It's huge." And then as we fly right over CN Tower, which by then was the tallest thing she had ever seen, she goes, "Dad, look, I'm taller than CN Tower." And as we come into land over the forests of Nova Scotia, she says, "Dad, I think I saw a bear." As we get off at the baggage belt, I can see the sparkle in her eyes. That is the magic of flying. Now, as you probably can tell by now, I'm quite an aviation geek. Sustainability is a big deal in aviation these days. I would love to see a show of hands. How many of you believe by 2050 aviation can meet its goals? Who are the optimists in the room? Oh my goodness, none. All right. Among the pessimists in the room, we have here, who are the realists? Who thinks we can get there, maybe, maybe not? About 1/3 of the room, so I'm guessing 2/3 of the room is kind of pessimistic here. I've got jet fuel in my veins, so I like to just go, no, I have to be politically correct. I've got sustainable aviation fuel, SAF in my veins, not jet fuel. So I would love to believe that aviation can become sustainable. So why does this happen? This was just a couple of weeks back when Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, got pied in Brussels by some climate activists. What do the climate activists want? I actually had, last week, I hosted a podcast on sustainable aviation, and I dared to have a climate activist from Netherlands come on the podcast. And I asked her, "Why are you so angry with aviation? It's an industry we love." Here's what the climate activists say. Her name was Hiske. Hiske said that aviation's share of global emissions, CO2, is about to go up from 2 to 3%, which our CEOs love to quote, to 22% by 2050. Just let that sink in. By 2050, if nothing is done, aviation's CO2 footprint will increase tenfold if nothing is done. Why do you think this is happening? And she continued to explain that this is happening because currently there are 29,000 airplanes in the air, and in 2050, there will be 42,000 airplanes in the air, most of which, as we heard from Steve Hazy this morning, will be built using today's technology. These are not electric planes flying around, right? And then what happens is, while aviation's footprint is going up, the other industries are rapidly decarbonizing. I was picked up in a Tesla in Texas yesterday. There are electric cars. If you book an Uber Green, a Tesla will pull up. But if I try to book a green flight tomorrow, I can't be on an electric plane tomorrow. So other industries are decarbonizing faster. This is why climate activists are angry and against aviation. Moreover, there was a customer survey done recently in which 77% of the respondents said that airlines have the responsibility to deal with their carbon footprint. So that's the climate activist perspective. What about the airline CEO perspective? Are we or are we not ignoring the climate breakdown as an industry? Let's ask ourselves that, because obviously aviation brings a lot of good to the world. We want to preserve. So here's what the airline CEO says. I'm focusing on operational efficiencies. I'm trying to get as much SAF as possible, but there's not enough of it. I'm trying to ensure that I have a younger, newer fleet to go around. And by the way, I've placed some electric aircraft options and some hydrogen options, and that's what's happening. The thing is, with both of these arguments, you can see what the climate activists are angry about. You can see what the airline executive is saying. The challenge is that we must save aviation to save humanity. Aviation is great for humanity, as you can see. It connects the world, makes the world smaller, brings cultures together, allows us to do business. So we must save aviation to save humanity. And how do we do that? We have to go beyond what is being done already. I'd like to share two paradigms. One is technologies from the outside that are transforming aviation. An example is Heart Aerospace, a small Swedish company started by a husband and wife pair called Anders and Clara. One day, Anders was walking past the Swedish parliament in Stockholm. It was 2018, a cold January afternoon. And guess what? He saw a little girl, a teenage schoolgirl, with a board outside the Swedish parliament, protesting. 2 weeks later, she decided to take a ship across the Atlantic to speak at the UN Assembly, and in 2019 was named the Person of the Year by Time magazine. I am talking about Greta Thunberg. She's angry with aviation, right? She won't board one of our planes. At the same time, Anders Forslund sat down with his wife and said, you know what? I'm not going to be so angry. I'm going to work towards a solution. So what is Anders and Clara doing? They are building the world's first fully electric and electric hybrid aircraft. Heart Aerospace ES-30, which I showed you on the previous slide, will actually fly in 2028. SAS Scandinavian put tickets on sale, and they were sold out within minutes. And they worked very hard. They're from outside the industry. They're not from within the industry. They have decent commitment from United Airlines, from Air Canada. They have investment from SAS Scandinavian. They recently got the Danish government on board. They are getting the multitude of stakeholders to make electric flight a possibility. Will it be mainstream? Not yet, but it is happening. And this is just one example. Similar developments are happening in hydrogen flight. There's Universal Hydrogen that's looking at transportation and storage of hydrogen. There is ZeroAvia that is looking at a hybrid hydrogen-electric aircraft engine, so you can just retrofit the engine on an existing ATR or a Q400, and you can fly it very, very quickly. So there are technologies from outside of aviation coming within. These people have no aviation background, and they're changing aviation from outside. The second part is airlines transforming from within. And here, I'd like to share a story of Martin Koopmans. Martin is the CEO of KLM Cityhopper. Last summer, he operated a flight from Amsterdam Schiphol to Porto in Portugal. Now, you have to listen to this carefully, OK? The flight flew at the lowest airspeed possible. OK? So it's kind of a slow flight. Yet, the block time for the flight from gate to gate was the shortest ever. Sounds like a paradox, right? How can you fly really slow and yet get there the fastest or the soonest? What Martin and his team did was they talked to the air traffic control of the 4 countries that they were flying over, and they said, hey, listen, can you just give us the straightest path possible, the straightest up, the straightest down, and no detours anywhere, please. Not over military airspace, no airspace closures. Just give us the straightest path possible. And they managed to demonstrate what a single European sky can do. It reduced emissions, it got the flight there sooner, and they managed to fly slower, and hence saving fuel as well. Operational efficiencies can result in sustainability of flight tomorrow. And it's not just about fuel savings, it's about things like contrail reduction. It's about single engine or no engine taxi. There are technologies that can support that today. That's what the airlines can do right away. We don't have to wait. Where does this all add up? You've got the technologies from the outside. You've got the technologies from within and the operational efficiencies that airlines are working on. Here's a chart. This is not by me. It's by ATAG, their Waypoint report, which shows you all the leaves are sustainable aviation fuel supporting aviation. All the lightning is electric aircraft, and then you've got hydrogen fuel cell. So right now, we are in 2020s. It's all SAF. As we get closer to 2025, it gets on to a bit of SAF on short-haul commuter 9 to 10-seater aircraft, really small aircraft. As you get on to 2040, 2045, you will see hydrogen and electric getting wider proliferation across the world. It also helps that jurisdictions like EU have strong mandates, and in the US, you have really good incentives from California, from Washington State, the IRA that's coming. That truly helps the development of these technologies and allows airlines to adopt them as well. Additionally, you'll realize that sustainable aviation fuel has a critical role to play. Where do you bridge this gap? If you look at total CO2 reductions, SAF has a critical role to play. And we cannot ignore that. We must be scaling SAF. If you're an airline executive in the room, you must be thinking about where you're locking in those sustainable aviation fuel supplies for the next 10 to 15 years. Because guess what? United is locking all of them before you can get there. So hurry up. You need to get there quickly, because there aren't that many SAF producers and suppliers around right now. You have to make sure that you lock these in. Even if your customers are not asking for your sustainability strategy or SAF right now, your investors are. And that's important for you to think about. So how can we take leadership? It's one thing to change as an industry, but time and again, aviation has proven that when we take leadership, we actually impact the entire humanity or the entire world. The impact of, think about dynamic revenue management, right? Now you have Uber offering dynamic revenue management. You have Uber offering in-flight entertainment, by the way. They took that from the airlines. Uber did not invent IFE. We did as an industry, right? So whatever we take lead in, it benefits other industries as well. And that is why we must take leadership in this and not just sit back and wait for a government to slap us with a carbon pricing or a mandate to rock us into action. We must take lead in this. There are a few things we can do to really take lead. I would like to highlight a couple of things. One is, what if we tie growth to sustainability? Instead of looking at carbon intensity, which is carbon footprint per person, or per seat mile, let's look at overall carbon footprint as well. Not only carbon intensity in isolation. That's important. I'll give you a simple example of how growth can be tied to sustainability. Did you know that Airbus, every time it delivers a new aircraft, puts SAF on it, on the delivery flight, on their own accord? They don't charge the airline for it. Did anyone ask Airbus to do it? No, but they're doing it. Similarly, there are air shows. There's Dubai Air Show coming up in a couple of weeks. Who's going there? Anyone going to be in Dubai Air Show? I'll see you there, Joe. Imagine an airline that comes in with a 500-plane order. What if they tie that order to 500 airplane worth of sustainable aviation fuel as well? What if every new aircraft order is tied to SAF orders as well? That's rethinking how we traditionally look at growth. Apply the polluter-pays principle. Now, this is a contentious one. Aviation industry hates frequent flyer taxes. I'm not advocating frequent flyer taxes, but what if you have a simple fly more, pay more principle, where for a frequent flyer, like many of us in the room, from our 10th flight onwards, perhaps a 10% of our fare goes towards buying sustainable aviation fuel. Many people in the industry say, oh, this can't be done, but guess what? Has anyone flown out of London Heathrow lately? There's an airline passenger departure tax that gets added onto your flight. For the record, if all the airline passenger departure tax in the UK is added up, it will take care of the UK's SAF mandate annually, right now. It's just that today it goes into a bottomless pit called the HMRC. What if we just cordon it off towards a Green Skies Fund or a Clean Skies Fund to take care of the SAF needs of airlines? It can be done. Charges have been imposed on aviation before. I'm just saying we cordon it off towards a Green Skies Fund. It can be done. What about us? What can we do as individuals to reduce our own carbon footprint? I almost fell off the chair when I first was forced by one of my teammates in SimpliFlying to calculate my own carbon footprint. That year, I had flown 75 flights, being part of the industry. Not so odd. And I decided to be conscious about my travels. Of course, COVID helped after that. Simple things, like what if you fly nonstop as opposed to flying multiple, a hub and spoke. Charles Duncan was here earlier talking about Norse. Fly one of his nonstop flights, high density. Oh, there he is, high density, nonstop, and it gets you point to point instead of going via a hub in case you're trying to collect miles or status points, for example, right? Something else, take a workation. My last 3 Christmases, I have taken my family along by tagging on a work trip. That has led us to rather absurd holiday spots like Panama and Saudi Arabia, but we've had fun. The thing is, when we take a workation, just combining 2 days of work with a week-long holiday where you bring the family along, it really does cut our own individual carbon footprint. Think about it for this Christmas, please. Instead of planning just a getaway, can you tag on work and then tag on the family holiday there? I said a few years ago I flew 75 flights for the year. By doing these steps, I managed to reduce my flights to 45 flights the year before COVID. And last year I took a total of 15 flights just by trying to fly nonstop. I bet you I was one of the higher yielding passengers for the airline because I was paying more for a nonstop flight. But I managed to reduce it from 75 flights to 15 flights. Not everyone has to do it, but let's at least be conscious as individual travelers. All of these lessons are in my book that is releasing today. I mentioned just a couple of airlines and examples. And it was about 300 hours of interviews that we did for the book over the last 1 year. It's right here. And Skift has been very kind to buy copies. So it's available because based on what I've learned in writing this book over the last 1.5 years, I'm full of hope. I truly believe that the industry can save the magic of flying for myself, for my daughters, for the future generations. I will be happy to sign copies. If you scan that QR code, you can actually get the book on Amazon for 99 cents. It's only for this audience for today. Do not circulate that QR code, please. Go ahead and buy that. You can get it on Amazon for 99 cents until 5 p.m. today, and I'll be outside during the break signing copies. Thank you very much.